Welcome to Black Girls Can Talk, the podcast where we dive into real, unfiltered conversations about what it means to be a Black woman in today's world. I'm your host, Dr. DaJaneil McCree, founder of Black Girls Can Talk. And here, we're creating a space where we can unpack everything from culture and beauty trends to mental health and the joys and challenges of Black womanhood. Whether you're here for the tea or looking for deep discussions, you're in the right place. So grab your seat at the table and let's get into it. Welcome back to another episode of Black Girls Can Talk, where we empower and uplift the stories of Black women. I'm super excited today because we have a wonderful guest with us, Mable Taplin, who is an RN. And let me put some respect on that because you're a 25-year RN. Is that correct? Or
27.
27? Okay. Thank you. Thank you for just giving back in that way. Absolutely. So 27, that's even greater than what I assumed. You're also an author and a philanthropist. Mm-hmm. And you're also the founder of Discover Her Life. Let me make sure I'm getting that right. Is it Discover Her Life? Yes. Yeah. And so I just want you, if you don't mind, I said all of those things, but if you don't mind telling the people a little bit about who you are.
What's interesting, I get asked often, how would I describe myself? And I'm a girl from the south side of Chicago. That's rooted in traditional values, grounded in my faith and my commitment to representing God first and my family legacy. I'm very grateful that I get to live out my dream every day, which is showing up as my authentic self to empower women and girls to live their best life. So all of my both personal and professional pursuits have been basically grounded in my values. And I think it's really important for all of us to be able to identify who we are, because that makes decision-making that much easier. So I'm grateful to be here today.
On top of all the things that I already mentioned, you're an advocate for Black women.
Yes.
And their health. I definitely want to talk about something that we don't talk about, a lot of us at least. So today we'll be talking about perimenopause and just how it impacts Black women, our rates and the differences between us and other demographics, just all of the nuances. And again, some of those things that people don't know. So as a researcher, you all know I have to come with some statistics. So I'll start there and then we'll kind of just go from there, and I'll ask you some questions about what you've experienced in on your side of the field. So first one being Black women enter perimenopause 8.5 months earlier than white women and experience more severe symptoms. Black patients are less likely to be offered pain management, diagnostic testing, or specialized referrals compared to white patients. And only 7% of women, so this is Black, white, Hispanic, know the full range of symptoms associated with perimenopause. So those startled me because I was like, wait, I'm part of the 7%. Hold on. And that's why I'm so excited to talk about this today, because there are so many things that disproportionately affect us that we just haven't been educated on. And we need to become more educated in order to know how to prepare for certain things, because some things are inevitable, right? As far as our makeup, genetic makeup, and what we're prone to. But I want to first start off with asking you to kind of explain to us what perimenopause is and why it's more intense, or why the rates look different for Black women.
Sure. So before I answer the perimenopause question, I think it's fair to level set that health literacy is low in the United States overall, that's not unique to Black people. That is a United States societal issue. Where most of us, if we are exposed to any kind of health education, it's in grammar school. If we're lucky, it's in high school. And then after that, you're on your own. Our healthcare system is designed for secondary prevention, which is screening, not primary prevention. That's where the education comes from. That's where you have the education about your lifestyle, what you should eat, how you move your body, how you manage your sleep. The reason why I'm setting this foundation is because perimenopause is a stage of life. And we are just naming perimenopause, but most of us never received a proper education around our reproductive health in the first place. And then we have symptoms that we don't know what to attribute them to, whether they are related to perimenopause or not. So I want to start the conversation off with, how do we do a better job of making sure that women understand the basic functionalities of their body and their reproductive health? And then we could talk about perimenopause, right? And so the idea first is, are we monitoring our cycle? Do we understand what it means to have a menstrual cycle? Because even the terminology that we use to describe a cycle, people only think about it in terms of when they are actually bleeding, right? But your cycle really is from day one bleed all the way to the next time you bleed. And a lot of us were never taught what normal is for us. We sort of found out about it anecdotally, and I'm talking from the perspective of you like research that the concept of a health belief model is that we are influenced by those that are in our sphere of influence on how we view health and healthy things. So if my mother didn't teach me or model for me about how to take care of my body, or if she modeled, i.e. douching, we know years later, I'm 47, that douching is not great for you, but my mother had me douching when I was 13 years old because that's what she did, right? Summer's Eve. I'm really telling my age.
Right.
Summer's Eve. And so the idea really is giving ourselves permission, number one, to learn the basics around reproductive health. And number two, giving ourselves permission to challenge some of the myths and maybe some of the behaviors that we modeled after our previous generation. And so with that foundation of what our cycle is, it should come every 28 days to 35 days. 35, I said 35, because some people have longer cycles. So just really identifying what is normal for you helps you to really understand when there are changes in your body. Now, that's just the bleed, right? Then you should probably pay attention to the symptoms that you have before and after you bleed. What I never learned as a young person is what's normal and what's not normal, right? That, did y'all know that we're not supposed to have a flat stomach the entire time? That sometimes there is a little bit of extra bloat in preparation for your cycle. And what's interesting, we are socialized with social media and pictures and things that have been airbrushed that don't necessarily mirror real life. You know, now we in this in real life, like we got to clarify what is real life. And I want to talk to the ladies, since this is Black Girls Can Talk, that your responsibility is to figure out who you are in real life. What is your benchmark? What is your baseline in real life? Is your cycle 28 days? Is it 31 days? Do you have certain symptoms at a certain time of the month? Ovulation is usually day 15. That's smack dab in the middle, because that's on average 30 days. But when are you ovulating? We only start having these conversations in the context of pregnancy. I'm 47. I've never had a baby, and I've never been close to having a baby, so I wasn't paying attention to ovulation. But I should have been paying attention to ovulation, because that also impacts my hormones, the mood that I'm in. It impacts when I feel horny. That's the other thing. Growing up in church, since we Black Girl Talking, I'm over here praying and asking God to take away, my attraction to men, and disregarding the biology that the hormones fluctuate to make you more attractive to men because of procreation and biology not seeing.
Oh, that's good.
So before we get to perimenopause, we had to have the conversation about reproductive health, so that as we are talking about perimenopause, we have it in the proper context. It is the stage of life where your body is, from a biological perspective, transitioning from being able to produce an egg and have a baby to not, right? So then that's the physiological perspective. Now, what goes along with that is our basic understanding of the function of hormones. And hormones are essential, in a very simple way, is our body's way of signaling organs or systems to act. And unfortunately, the way we are socialized to understand hormones, we only think about hormones in the context of estrogen and progesterone. And sometimes for women, testosterone. Like most women don't know that testosterone is also at play in our body. So to set the baseline of what's happening during perimenopause, it is your body is starting this journey of, okay, we're no longer going to be as adamant about making sure that we are producing a viable egg every month. The ovaries start to slow down, and estrogen is what is produced by the ovaries to tell all the other systems, hey, we're going to not prioritize having a baby. Now, you mentioned a statistic about Black women and the impact of perimenopause on Black women and how the statistic says 8.5 months earlier, but there's other data that says it's between 1 and 3 years earlier than our white female counterparts. So the reason why I bring up this concept of hormones, because I want to talk about stress hormones. I want to talk about adrenaline, and I want to talk about cortisol, because the way our bodies work is, let's just put it in the context of our ancestry where we are in fight or flight. So several centuries ago, before we had civilization, if you and I were walking in the jungle and we saw a bear, we got to get up enough energy, enough focus to run from the bear, right? You don't have time to think about, oh, this is a bear. Let me make a plan. Let me strategize. Your instinct and your brain perceives danger. So the hormones that say, hey, we need to make sure that her legs got enough blood so those muscles can function. We need to make sure that she's alert. That's cortisol and adrenaline. So she can run away and get safety, right? And that perception is not at the level of cognition. Okay, so think about this in terms of, in that scenario, I see the bear, I run. In those instances, I will go to sleep. I will recover, my body will return to baseline. And then I might see a bear every 5 days. Okay, so my body has time to be stressed, respond, and go to sleep. That's the way our DNA is made to respond to stress. So fast forward to modern day, where we're not fighting bears, or we're not running from bears, because I need to say this too. You get 3 responses: fight, flight, or freeze. Okay? So we're not fighting bear, but I perceive that I'm in danger because of racism. I perceive that I am wearing multiple hats as a woman. I got to feed these kids or the people at my job. I have these emotional stressors. And so the time that I am producing cortisol so that I can deal with an emotional stressor, I'm supposed to be able to go to sleep. But what happens is I'm stressed by this responsibility over here. I'm stressed by some social pressures over here. I'm stressed by, we talked about this before, my own internal stressors, right? My judgments of myself. And I'm not really going to sleep to repair. I'm closing my eyes, but my brain is still going. And then I'll wake up to do it over and over and over again. And so what does that tell my brain? Why would I be concerned about having a baby? If I'm not safe, then why would I have a baby? So what I am describing is something called the progesterone steal. So I gave us a story around how the body prioritizes. So when it comes to the progesterone steal, in a cycle, your body produces progesterone at the second half, that's ovulation, in order to help you calm down, relax, but also to prep your body for pregnancy. It's what tells the uterus, hey, all right, we're going to make it nice and comfy, right? So progesterone starts to go up, but if the egg is not fertilized, then that it starts to process for you to get to bleed. those last days. All right. But if I'm stressed this entire time, guess what? I ain't going to make enough progesterone because my body says you got to survive. So it takes the precursor, which is pregnenolone, of progesterone and says, instead of me making progesterone, I'm going to make more cortisol. And are you following me?
Yeah, I'm just.
So this is what we are not aware of. So I gave you some science around this is happening over and over and over again. So we're talking about it in the context of perimenopause, but we also should be talking about it in the context of infertility, right? Because if I'm consistently stressed, my body is designed to help me to survive. How am I going to survive or have a baby when I can't survive?
Everything makes sense to me, but I am blown away because we don't think about it in this context, like you said.
We're not taught to think about it in this context. Right? And so that's why I'm so passionate about it, because here I am as a whole clinician with all these experiences clinically, and nobody had the conversation with me. And I begun to research what was happening to me as I am having these symptoms, and no doctor that I went to, no primary care doctor, no OBGYN mentioned perimenopause to me. And so here I am. I have the capacity to do my own research and advocate for myself. But I'm always thinking there before the grace of God, who has the capacity that is not a clinician to advocate for themselves and to investigate, to have a better understanding of what's happening to them. Not everybody has that capacity. No. So my charge, even to myself for starting My Sister's Advocate, was to create that space and to make sure that I'm developing materials to help women to understand their bodies and to navigate perimenopause, especially Black women. And I also add the concept of weathering. You are familiar, maybe so Geronimus is a researcher that came out with research back in 1992 that looks at the cumulative effects of stress and stressors on Black people and how that impacts their disease diagnosis, when their disease. So this statistic that you gave about the 8%, that is could be tied to weathering. What is happening to Black people, and in this conversation, Black women, as it relates to dealing with structural violence and racism, that puts us at a higher risk for having not only diagnosed earlier for lifestyle diseases, but at a higher rate. Right? And so we have to have the conversation around, we talk about stress as an abstract thing, it's outside of me, but to be able to quantify, to say that the emotional stressors of navigating life in this body, right, in this gender as a Black woman, is a risk factor / variable for a vulnerability for shortened lifespan, but also decreased quality of life. And so why is this important for us to have this conversation now? It's important because we have more tools now than ever to combat that, but we lack the information, right? And so to be able to make the connection that my everyday decision making can influence how my body responds, and that even at the stage of life that I'm in at 47, I'm doing a better job. I've let some people in so they can hold me accountable of saying no to myself. Because when you have the capacity like I do, at what point does knowledge and not implementing the knowledge become self-betrayal?
That's good.
Right? I keep having conversations with some of my friends, and we are all in the same age group, all have different symptoms of perimenopause. And I'm like, I'm going to need you to stop drinking. I'm going to need you to stop drinking alcohol. That's contributing to your hot flashes. But then we start negotiating. Well, girl, I can't give up my wine. Well, I don't want to hear you talk about hot flashes anymore. Because I'm telling you
what to do,
that this is not anecdotal, right? the Surgeon General came out a couple months ago and talked about alcohol is now a class 1 carcinogen. And what do I mean by carcinogen for those of you? There is a direct causality that has been studied that alcohol increases your risk for developing cancer. We like to do things and say stuff like, oh, it's abstract. You got the number 1 authority in the United States coming out say, hey, y'all, hey, listen, alcohol increases your risk, all-cause mortality. So despite cancer, increases of your risk of early death. Yeah. I am thinking about it in the context of life or death, right? But they're thinking about it in the context of quality of life. So even in perimenopause, the suggestion is for women, you got to figure out what you're willing to negotiate, right? Because I have friends that are saying the alcohol gives me relief from these other stresses in my life. I'm not willing to give that up. Hot flashes, so be it, right? But then you have the conversation about the palpitations or whatever the symptoms that you are experiencing. The key also when you are engaging in the healthcare system is to lead with the symptom first and also remind your provider, hey, I am of the age of perimenopause. That as Black women, we could see perimenopause early as 35, 36. And perimenopause just means that your estrogen, progesterone levels are starting to fluctuate. And the earliness could be due to chronic stress, i.e. weathering, right? And so that's why you're seeing that is a variable that influences why it's showing up earlier and why it's more intense, because it is more intense because your hormones work in a cycle. I gave the one overview of the progesterone steal, but the other part of that is, we were talking about this before, we socialized to push forward, to be excellent. I was the first college graduate in my family. And so I went to college at 16. I graduated with honors. My mother was diagnosed with breast cancer when I was 20 years old. She died when I was 23. I had to raise my siblings. I have 3 younger brothers. So think about that in terms of chronic stress. Think about what I was socialized into, being a sister mama, an overachiever. Y'all see me on camera. It hasn't worked out bad for me. Don't feel sorry for me. I have the capacity, right? But I need to acknowledge the chronic stress element of it, right? And how that influences how my body manages stress. And all that time that I spent pushing past my threshold of tiredness, guess what's kicking in? Adrenaline and cortisol. And let me give you another physiological lesson. Perimenopause in prior generations did not look like what we're going through today. And I need to acknowledge that because of the kinds of stresses that we're under today, not just the psychological stress and the emotional stress, but the environmental stress. We now are faced with more environmental stressors and hormonal disruptors in our time than previous generations. What do I mean by hormonal disruptors? I mean chemicals in our environment, whether it is fragrances, our cleaning materials, stuff that they use to coat our furniture. There is research that says those are hormonal disruptors. Our food, things called phytoestrogens that mimic estrogen in the body. And so there's a lot of reasons why people, women in particular, but people's hormones are out of balance. And so the other part of this conversation, for baseline awareness, is for those of us that have the capacity, I need you to start getting baseline lab tests for your reproductive hormones, but also for cortisol and also insulin. to make sure that you have baseline knowledge of where you are and where you're starting from. The other thing that I talked about earlier about health literacy is we only go to the doctor when we're trying to get screened or something is wrong. I need us to change our paradigm about how we engage, when and how we engage the healthcare system as it relates to our womanhood. Right? Because we've been socialized that I just need to go to the OBGYN and my well woman check. Most women can't tell you what the well woman check is. The well woman check, that pap smear is for a STI. That bimanual ovary where the doctor is sticking a part of her hand in your vagina. She's feeling your ovaries to manually determine if it's smooth, the shape of it, etc. All related to maybe pregnancy and an abnormality related to a STI. And then you may have a breast exam, right? But the questions when you go to the doctor are centered around reproduction. If you have a doctor that has time for the education, because these visits are typically 15 to 20 minutes. So where are you getting the education of, so what's happening with your life? What's happening with the stress in your life? How is that impacting your cycle? We're not getting any of that education. So my charge also would be that we have to be more intentional about conversations like this in the form of a podcast. But I need us to get back to having these kitchen conversations with our family, because also as Black people, we gonna gather and talk. And we are going to trust our sphere of influence for health information. So how about let's start with getting some baseline good information. And if you feel comfortable taking sound bites from this conversation and talking about it with the women in your life that you love, because that's also how we're going to have this collective impact. And it's especially important for us because of medical mistrust. I don't trust my doctor to come and talk to my doctor about what's happening to me. But you know what? You might trust your cousin. You might trust me even on this podcast, because you can see I'm a Black girl from the south side of Chicago. I keep saying that because it's really important.
It's important.
It is important, right? I have so many stories in my own life where it's been my peers, or it's been the peers of women that I love that said something or that intervened in a way that made the difference in a health outcome. It's all over me. And so the passion that you hear in my voice about just setting some basic expectations and baseline knowledge is amplified because no other ethnic group has to deal with the structural violence and racism that influences our ability to communicate and engage in a way that our humanity is first. So the urgency is there. We don't have the luxury of not advocating for ourselves. We don't have the luxury of not prioritizing these kinds of conversations so that we can have a baseline knowledge. I don't need you to be the whole doctor and the nurse. What I do need you to do, though, is to be comfortable and confident enough so that you understand basically what your cycle is. You understand what's normal for you, because the other part about medical gaslighting is you go to the doctor with a symptom. They be like, no. I'm like, ma'am, do you see that my finger is hanging off the side of my hand? And no, I don't think it's that bad. I've experienced that as a clinician. So I can't imagine, I keep saying it out loud, somebody that doesn't have a me. Right? And so, we want to make sure that people, one, are aware of perimenopause. Two, it's a natural stage of life. But your behavior before and during perimenopause does impact how perimenopause shows up in your life. And I would say to be able to contextualize perimenopause in every system of your body, not just your reproductive health, but if you experiencing some new symptoms like frozen shoulder, or you itching all of a sudden, or you have a change in your taste buds, these are some unconventional side effects of perimenopause. Think about it. Let it be at the top of the mind that I am between the age of 35 and maybe 55, and I want to bring up perimenopause in every conversation. At the front, not the back. Yeah.
First of all, you done read me. You done educated me. You did so many things in that. But I appreciate you because, for one, starting off by level setting. Going back to the basis of providing education, because you are so totally right. We could not have hopped into that without talking about all the things that came before it. When I say you touched on air, I hope y'all are listening and truly listening. If you didn't listen for real, play it back and listen again, because you hit on everything I talk about in my professional life. All of the different forms of racism that we encounter, how this world impacts us, how we impact us, and the things that we experience. I was clutching my pearls because you said 35, and I said, "Ooh, I'm getting there. Hold on." And I just, when you talked about stress, and just because I work, a lot of the times I speak of or work in the theory of, we know it as the strong woman.
Yeah.
But in research it's termed something else. So I work with that theory all the time. In a specific minority stress theory, all of those things, specific to
and
Black
the allostatic
women,
load,
all
of those things.
And I want to say this because you said before I forget what I want to ask you. You said something that stood out to me because, and you mentioned later in your statement, I couldn't imagine not having a me.
Yes.
And the unfortunate part is we don't have uses.
Yes.
And what you said earlier about that statement was that I only know what I know because I've done the research on my own.
Yes.
And I had the capacity to. And that hit so hard for me because if I wasn't a researcher,
yes,
if I didn't go through all of these years of schooling and learn what I learned, I would not know. And so I'm able to advocate for myself and then therefore teach others to advocate for themselves, and especially clinical settings, hospitals, things like that, because of what I know. But that's information I had to find out. Yeah. It was not given to me. So I love that idea of those kitchen conversations because it's so important. Y'all know I love Detroit and how much I talk about being from Detroit. So you speak about your upbringing and where you're from. And like we pause and say it because it's important. It is. You experience things differently because of where you're from. And different things are ingrained in you because of being from where you're from. So unfortunately, we like cousins, Chicago and Detroit. So unfortunately,
my bestie's from Detroit.
I know that's right. I'm sure she's a great person.
Yes.
But we were raised with this hard exterior, to say the least. Yeah. And we just grew up fighting in a different way, whether that was physically or internally with ourselves or fighting the world in a certain way. And it became, I would say, I've become desensitized to a lot of things.
For sure. It's a survival mechanism, and it's a part of how we have been socialized to navigate a world that feels unsafe. And thank you for helping me to revisit the concept of why women need each other. I was going to touch on it, but I'll touch on it now. In perimenopause, as your body is fluctuating in the hormones, it becomes that much more important for you to identify safe spaces with other women.
Absolutely.
Because I don't know about any of you. I grew up in a house full of men and a mom, but our cycles are synced, and we sometimes forget, and we talk about it very abstractly. But this human connection that women share, particularly as they are navigating perimenopause, is really important. Relationships between women that feel safe with each other helps your nervous system to regulate, right? And that becomes that much more important in perimenopause as a Black woman, because you spend all of this time overriding your nervous system being in survival mode. So we also have to be intentional during these times of creating safe spaces with women and prioritizing time together as in women, so that the positive hormones, the oxytocin, and help our nervous system to regulate, toning our vagus nerve, which the vagus nerve is the longest nerve in your body. And essentially, when we think about a rubber band, when you stretch out a rubber band and you leave it stretched, over time, it loses its rebound ability, right? So think about our nervous system and our what we call vagal tone. It is that chronic stress is the rubber band is stretched. It's never going to sleep. It's never rebounding. And then once you take it off the stress, it maintains the shape. So as we age, we need to be more intentional about helping that vagus nerve to regain and maintain tonality, particularly for those of us that are in perimenopause, because our stress threshold is lower. Why would it be lower, Mable? Because I've been stressed out this entire time. I've been wearing all of these hats, and now I'm reaching a threshold where, you know, my hormones is like, look, we done had enough. We winding down. You keep playing. Right? And so the idea is, how do we also combat some of the symptoms? Prioritizing time with your girlfriend that you feel safe with, girlfriend or girlfriends. That is a way to signal to your body, I'm safe. Very, very important. Don't miss that. The second thing is being intentional about exercises that tone the vagus nerve, like humming. We mentioned before that we both belong to church. A part of gospel music is call and response and humming. Some good old Dr. Watts. I love the Lord.
Come on.
So think about it in terms of that humming sensation, that rhythm senses to you that you're safe. The other thing that you could do is look up tapping. Tapping is a modality that calms your nervous system. You have to focus. You tap on certain parts of your body. You can see me. It also helps to decrease anxiety. So you can look up tapping. Also breath work, right? Getting your breath. There's something called box breathing, 4x4 breathing. So I'm breathing in for 4, I'm holding for 4, I breathe out for 4, I hold it again for 4. And I keep doing that. What that does is it signals to my nervous system, hey, I'm safe. The other one is 4-7-8 breathing. I breathe in for 4, I hold for 7, I blow out for 8. These are things that I encourage all women to start employing multiple times a day to help your body get into the habit of resetting and making sure that your stress hormones have an opportunity to decrease. The other thing that is paramount, we got to prioritize sleep. 2 of the most popular over-the-counter medications are sleep aids and digestion. There's something called the gut-brain pathway. They cousins. If you are stressed out, guess what? Your food ain't gonna digest. Cause why? If I'm being chased by a bear, why I gotta break down some food? Right? My priority is other things, running. Now I might not be running in real life, but I'm running in my mind. So those are the connections that we are not aware of. Right? That brain-gut connection that really stress is at the root of it. But we think of stress as an abstract thing. We no longer have the luxury to look at stress as external. We no longer have the luxury of accepting chronic stress as a part of our life. We have to alleviate chronic stress. You're going to have to learn how to say no. If you don't learn how to say no, your body is going to say no for you, and you're not going to like it.
And no is a complete sentence.
That part.
So let's just add that. You're not going to like it. We don't know how to say no, but we have to. We have to in order to save ourselves. Literally.
Yes.
So many things. Look, we got to figure out a way for you to come back. I know. Can I tell the people about the fact that you want to be in this space?
Yeah. So I am starting a podcast called My Sister's Voice.
Come on.
And we'll be having more conversations centered around perimenopause, aging well, and caregiving, which also the reason why I chose that platform is because caregiving and aging are also stressors that perpetuate, perimenopause. And like I said, I have been the first and the only for a lot of things in my life. And one day I woke up and I said, why am I figuring this out on my own. I got older women. Why we ain't talking about, why nobody say to me in a way that I can understand that this is what I should be paying attention to. And so that multicultural, intergenerational exchange is very important to me, because what we didn't talk about is I'm a global traveler. I've been to 65 countries and I've accessed care around the world. And a huge part of my experiences was having conversations with women about life. And so I've picked up some Ayurvedic interventions to help with symptoms. I've been to Southeast Asia, Thailand, Vietnam, Bali, you name it, talking to women about women's stuff, right? And so I also have the advantage of having the luxury to be able to implement some of those suggestions in my own life and can testify that they work. So I wanted to create a space, the space that I need, which is to have more conversations about how am I supposed to be navigating this potential 13 years that I'm about to be dealing with this, because it's not a one and done. I'm preparing myself for then post-menopause, right? But this is a conversation, a crucial conversation that we need to continue to have, because as you are approaching the age, and we give these benchmarks, but what's most important is that you get into the habit of establishing your own baseline for your health at whatever stage you're in. Even if you don't consider yourself to be at the age of perimenopause, understanding your body, what's happening in my body. Am I gaining weight, right? Am I inflamed outside of perimenopause? So that's where the aging well part comes in, is we need permission, and we also need knowledge, and we need empowerment so we can show up as our most authentic, healthy selves.
Period.
Like
there's literally nothing else to say.
Yes.
And so I again want to thank you for your wealth of knowledge, but not only that, but your passion, because you can tell when someone is really passionate about something. So you didn't fake that, right? Like, you didn't come in here and be like, oh, I'm about to put this, wear this mask because I'm on this podcast. Like, no, you genuinely are passionate about this. So I appreciate you. I thank you for sharing.
The other thing and this is another podcast conversation, but we need to have a better understanding of our circadian rhythm. People are running around here buying melatonin, but the reason why you're not producing enough melatonin is because your optic nerve perceives light. And when the sun goes down, it perceives, hey, it's time to go to sleep. We're going to make melatonin. But what do? We keep looking at artificial light. We got artificial light. The con to that is that we don't know how to turn the lights off. That signals our bodies that it's time to go to sleep. And so when we talk about these things about supplements, that's what I mean about the awareness of some of our everyday lifestyle choices that's setting us up to be out of alignment. And that circadian rhythm is really important to your hormones. And we come out with sound bites like things about cancer risk, et cetera, but we're not developing messaging to say, listen, when you don't go to sleep, your body does not repair. When you don't go to sleep at night consistently or over time, your body does not repair. When you keep staying up past your sleepiness, this is called a sleep switch. It's no longer going to tell you you're sleepy. And then you wake up and be like, oh, I'm so wired, I can't go to sleep, ma'am. This is a fallout of months of you ignoring your sleep switch. Again, the rubber band, these are feedback loops that our bodies work on. So homework assignment. Circadian rhythm. Understand what your circadian rhythm is. If you are a early riser, getting up with the sun is best. Get you some morning sunlight. Red light is when the sun is rising. Look at the sun. Get in the sun. Black people need the sun. And also at sunset, you get red light twice a day for free. Now, in our society, they're going to sell you a red light lamp for $50 to $250. I'm telling you that you could get red light for free twice a day. You getting up in the morning, making sure that you are looking at the sun naked with your naked eye. And I'm also a proponent of grounding, getting out and putting your feet on the earth. It helps with inflammation. It also grounds your nervous system. And so that circadian rhythm is how our body is in sync with the environment, and it influences our hormones. So prioritizing sleep also helps your immune system to reset. Repair happens between deep sleep and REM sleep. Like, there are 4 stages of sleep that we keep ignoring. Your mama used to make you go to sleep when you was in school. You had an 8 o'clock bedtime or 9 o'clock or whatever it was. And I remember saying, I can't wait till I'm grown so I could go to sleep when I want to. I am so guilty of sleeping in the bed with a laptop, working until I can't take it no more. And now I don't get sleepy. Now I want somebody to fix the fact that I don't get sleepy. When I have abused my body up until this point because I'm achieving and I got to send out one more email, right? And so some of this is we need to have some come to ourselves, Jesus, whoever you call
Jesus too.
But having an honest assessment of what behaviors we are willing to change in order to position ourselves to have a better experience in the stage of life that we're in. I am a big proponent of personal responsibility because we can't afford not to hold ourselves accountable for some of the outcomes that we are experiencing in these bodies that we have for, whatever time we have on earth.
Listen, I keep getting ate up. So I got all these notes in my head. You done gave us homework. And I'm like, okay, I'm writing it down in my head. Like, okay, she said, okay. But I do want to make sure that we don't walk away without people knowing where they can find you and how they can just learn more about you. I'm sure that once your podcast is up and running, because we are excited about that, that we'll be able to find it on your socials and things. So let us know where we can find you.
Yeah, so I'm really in the building stage, but you can sign up for my email distribution list at mabletaplin.com. My name is MAB, B as in boy, LETAPLIN.com. You can also find me on Instagram, Mable Taplin RN. On Instagram, and I'm in the midst of building out the infrastructure for My Sister's Advocate, but it's coming soon. And let me just say this to everybody that's listening to me. In 2022, I was bedridden. I experienced really just crippling fatigue and palpitations, and I had gone through a DNC. I was having spotting, changes in my cycle. My mood was terrible. Nobody ever mentioned perimenopause to me. And so I was going to these specialists. I work in pharma, and I have an extensive healthcare network. So it's not like I'm a regular person trying to navigate care. I have resources. I'm talking to folks, and nobody ever mentioned perimenopause to me. And so the passion that you also hear is that I was able to heal myself of Hashimoto's with diet, with doing some of the things that I'm talking to you about. And I made a promise to God that if he let me get up out this bed, I wouldn't play small anymore. So that's what you also hear is my commitment to God to show up as a healed person, to make sure that people understand the power that they hold in healing themselves, but also even if you are already diagnosed with whatever disease, that you still have the power to influence how your body responds to dealing with that disease in the form of stress or what have you. So I'm committed to being a vessel because to whom much is given, much is required, and I've been given life, and I don't take that for granted.
Oh, that's good. I want to thank you again because and I want to say this while we're still on camera. Thank you for pouring into me as not only a Black woman, but as a Black woman of faith, and that's had lived experience that all of us need to hear. So thank you so much. There's no better way to close that. Like that was so good. This entire episode was so good that I'm like, I can't wait to listen to it. Like, I'm ready to hear it again, and we definitely have to keep in touch. I am going to sign up for your
thank
your
you.
updates and things. Look, I typed it in real quick, and I'm gonna make sure I get on your listserv. But thank you again for joining me today.
We will
definitely be hearing more from you. And if this episode resonated with you, or you know someone it'll be helpful to, please share it. Make sure you're liking, subscribing, make sure you're following Mable, and just getting on that listserv as well to stay up to date. So we thank you for joining us. And until next time, I'm Dr. McCree, and that is Mable. Love y'all. That's a wrap on today's episode of Black Girls Can Talk. I hope you felt heard, empowered, and inspired by today's conversation. If you love what you heard, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with your girls. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at blackgirls_can talk to stay updated on future episodes and join the conversation online. Got something you want us to talk about or want to be a guest on our show? Hit us up on social media or visit our website at blackgirlscantalk.com. Thank you for listening, and remember, Black girls can talk, and we've got a lot to say. Until next time, stay powerful.